If you would like to discuss the murder in your family on this podcast, please be sure to visit themurderinmyfamily.com for more information. You can support this podcast by visiting patreon.com/themurderinmyfamily. This episode may contain unsettling material or subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of The Murder in My Family. Please allow me a moment to share some important information before we get started. If you find that you enjoy this podcast, please take a moment to rate and review it wherever you listen to podcasts, so that the show can continue to grow and reach new listeners. To learn more about the show or the cases we discuss, please visit themurderinmyfamily.com. You can also find us on Twitter with the handle @MurderInMyFam, or by searching for the Murder in My Family podcast on Facebook. If you haven't already done so, I hope you'll complete a survey that takes about 30 seconds. You'll really be helping the show out. You can fill out the survey today by visiting survey.libsyn.com/themurderinmyfamily. That's survey.libsyn.com/The Murder in My Family. I really appreciate and thank you for your support in completing this survey. If you'd like to support the show with a Patreon donation, it's always appreciated. And you can do so by visiting patreon.com/The Murder in My Family. Benefits of supporting the show on Patreon include such things as early, commercial-free access to new episodes of the show, plus bonus material not heard in regular episodes. It may include thank you cards, stickers, and more. If you prefer to, you can also support the show through a PayPal donation by visiting paypal.me/The Murder in My Family. In each episode, I give shoutouts to any new supporters. In this episode, I'd like to thank Starla Sims and Lisa Macron-Collis. And thank you to all of the supporters that generously donate and keep the podcast going and improving. Thank you, and now on with the show. On Saturday, August 17, 1996, in Columbia, South Carolina, 65-year-old Jack L. Robinson found himself along the Congaree River at the Rosewood Boat Ramp. An odd place to be since he didn't own a boat or take part in boating activities. The mystery of why he wound up at that boat ramp that day would only deepen after he was savagely attacked there by a mysterious man with a knife. Jack Robinson would later die from his wounds, and to this day his killer remains free. That summer, Jack, a Vietnam veteran, was enjoying the freedom of retirement after serving his country proudly for over 2 decades in the Air Force. Although serving in the military might have meant that he could wind up any place. After retiring from the Air Force, Jack settled in Columbia, where he was born and raised. Jack had been divorced for years, and he had one daughter, Tammy, from his marriage. After his military retirement, Jack started another career as a civilian employee at a hospital on the Fort Jackson military base in Columbia. After 40 years of working hard, Jack had earned his downtime. Never a man to just sit around, Jack spent much of his time trying to be active. He attended church and would volunteer at local soup kitchens and take part in activities that helped out veterans and the homeless. And he was also looking forward to spending more time with his grandkids. Jack Robinson had never been in trouble with the law, and by all accounts, was a decent and honorable man. But he also had a private side. That private side may or may not have played a role in his murder. Earlier in the day of that hot and fateful Saturday, Jack spoke with his brother by phone, and they made arrangements to meet for lunch the next day. Later, at around 6 p.m., Jack, for unknown reasons, drove to the Rosewood boat ramp, either alone or possibly with his killer in the car. 3 other people had parked near the same boat ramp and were waiting for a nearby concert to begin. A slight hill separated them from Jack and a second unknown man that Jack was talking to. But from their position, They were able to see Jack talking to this other man, and although they weren't eavesdropping, they could hear bits and pieces of the conversation between Jack and the mystery man. It sounded to the witnesses as if Jack and the man knew each other. Gradually, their conversation grew heated, and Jack, upset and raising his voice, asked something along the lines of, "What do you want? Money?" Then there was a moment of silence. The two men stopped talking. A moment later, Jack stumbled into the witness's view. He had taken off his shirt and was wearing a t-shirt that was covered in blood. Jack made his way towards the people, clutching his stomach and asking for help. He yelled out that he had been stabbed. From their vantage point, the three witnesses saw the man that had been talking to Jack run off along the riverbank. As Jack reached the horrified trio, he collapsed at their feet. One of them called 911, while the others tried to help the badly wounded man. Police and an ambulance were dispatched to the scene and arrived there in a matter of minutes. EMTs worked feverishly on Jack, who had suffered multiple knife wounds, and he was loaded into the ambulance and rushed to Palmetto Health Richmond Hospital. Back at the scene of the attack, police took descriptions of the suspect from witnesses. They described the assailant as being Hispanic, 25 to 35 years old, and with an olive complexion. He was about 5'5" and between 150 and 180 pounds. The man had a mustache and was wearing dark sunglasses. Police attempted to track the man using bloodhounds, and those bloodhounds led police to a local business. But after investigating the business and the people there was nothing of value learned by the police. The knife used to stab Jack was never found, and there were no obvious signs of a robbery. Jack had suffered severe damage to his internal organs, and had lost much of his blood, and unfortunately, he couldn't be saved. He passed away soon after arriving at the hospital. As part of their investigation, police talked to people that knew Jack, trying to identify anyone that might want to harm him. Nothing in his background or his life seemed to put him at risk. Everyone that knew Jack only had good things to say about him. Police searched his phone records looking for clues, anything that might provide a direction for them to go in. But for the most part, they came up empty-handed. At some point in the investigation, police began to dig into the possibility that Jack may have been living as a closeted gay man, and that he may have met his killer through that part of his life. Perhaps the man that killed Jack was trying to blackmail him, and Jack resisted, which is why he was killed. The news that police were investigating Jack's murder along these lines was a shock for his daughter Tammy. She had never known her father to be gay, and if he was, he hid it well from her. However, this investigative approach didn't seem to lead anywhere for police, and soon, Jack Robinson's case went cold. Then, out of the blue, a little over a year after Jack's murder, police felt that they had a major break in their case. In November 1997, police arrested a man named Max Naughton for the murders of a 30-year-old woman named Kimberly Brown and her 3-year-old niece, Lila. Police felt that these two murders might be connected to Jack Robinson's. Naughton had dumped Kimberly's and Lila's bodies in the water at the same boat ramp where Jack was killed. After further digging, police realized that Kimberly had worked for Jack at one point. Perhaps most interestingly of all was that Max Naughton had worked at the same business that the bloodhounds had tracked Jack's killer sent to following his murder. Armed with this strong but circumstantial evidence, police arrested Max Naughton for Jack's murder. The problem for police was that much about Max Naughton didn't line up with Jack's killer. Max Naughton is not Hispanic with olive skin, as witnesses describe Jack's killer. He's instead a light-skinned African American. The witnesses in Jack's case described Jack's killer as being between 25 and 30 years old. At the time of Jack's death, Max Naughton was only 19. Witnesses have also claimed that Naughton didn't have a mustache at the time of Jack's death, but Jack's murderer did. Finally, Max Naughton is 6'1" and has a large build. Jack's killer was described as being several inches shorter with a light build. Despite some of this information not matching up, police ran with Max Naughton as the prime suspect in Jack's case, and they told Jack's daughter Tammy that they had caught her dad's killer. Max Naughton was convicted for the murders of Kimberly Brown and her niece Lila. Police told Tammy that if Naughton ever got out of prison, they would make sure that Naughton was tried for her dad's murder. After that, Tammy stepped back from the stress and pain of her dad's murder and took time to grieve and heal. It wasn't until years later that Tammy found out that the police had dropped the charges against Naughton for the murder of her father. She was shocked and outraged and reached out to police. They then told her that they had reversed their thinking, that Naughton hadn't killed her father, and their thinking was that the killer was likely an illegal alien who may have left the country. 22 years of ups and downs, of false hope, and searching for answers has taken its toll on Jack Robinson's daughter Tammy, but she has not given up on trying to find her father's killer. She's heavily involved in online groups and Facebook, where she talks to anyone that will listen, all in an effort to somehow generate some kind of leads in her father's case. And now she talks with us. That conversation is next. Hi, Tammy, and thanks for joining me to discuss your father's case with us today.
Thank you for having me.
I know that you were interviewed by at least one other podcast about your dad's case, the Unresolved podcast, which is a great podcast, by the way. Your dad's case is one it's very mysterious, and I'm surprised that more people haven't heard of it, but it's still unsolved, so I hope that we can get more people familiar with it, especially down in the South Carolina area. Maybe someone will come forward with information.
Well, that would be nice. It is a mysterious case, that is for sure. Being that it's 22 years now, I have tried to, it's just been within the last couple years that I've really been having people come to me that does the podcast, the radios, that sort of thing. And I have done a few and hoping that, as they say, just one person would, come across, but we've had nothing. We've had no calls. And I've been trying to get it out, get his story out there through Facebook and Twitter, along with others helping, and but nothing, no feedback at all. So I don't understand what's going on with it.
Well, hopefully at some point somebody has information they'll come forward with, and it breaks the case open for you. But I wanted to start off by mentioning that your father, by all accounts, seemed like a very upstanding man, a very unlikely type of victim to die the way he did. He was an Air Force veteran. He had a career after the military. He was retired. He was a grandfather. So he had a lot going on for himself, and it just didn't seem like he was any kind of person that would be involved in any kind of foul play or anything. What's your take on that? Did he, what he seems like, is that how he was? He looks like a really good citizen and somebody that was upstanding. Would you agree with that?
I 100% agree with that. My father he dedicated his life to the military. Besides being in the Air Force, he was also civil service employee at Moncroft Hospital in Fort Jackson in Columbia, South Carolina, where he was born and raised. And he, besides going to church, he also helped out at the soup kitchens. He was always out helping as much as he could to the homeless, to the vets, to people, that needed help. And he was a good man. I mean, he was my dad, and I felt that he was a good man. I know that a lot of people looked up to him and felt the same way. And for something like this to happen, it did really take, it took us all back when I got the phone call, when my family got the phone call that this happened and where it happened at. It was not someplace. It would not be someplace that I would ever expect my father to have gone. And to this day, I have no clue to why he would have been at the Rosewood boat landing, why he would, who this person was, did he know this person? Yes, he was a very upstanding citizen. He didn't drink. He didn't smoke. He didn't do drugs. He was always that way.
So as far as you know, and from what you've been able to learn from police, he didn't have any enemies, didn't have any run-ins with anybody, no. Like he was worried about somebody coming after him or anything like that.
Nothing. They did background, they did checks on his phone. They did, of course, we had to remember this was back 1996, so we didn't have cell phones or anything. We had the house phones, so they were able to pull, Southern Bell's phone records. They were able to see the calls in which he had made. He had called and spoke with his brother, making lunch plans for after church on Sunday. He was helping a neighbor, an older lady that he would help out on the weekends to go to the grocery store and whatever. He had made plans to do that. Matter of fact, she was going out of town and he was going to be taking her to the post office, or not the post office, excuse me, to the airport. And, well, she did not get there by my father.
I think one of the unusual things about your father's murder was the way that he was killed. I've had a lot of guests on this show that have had loved ones who were stabbed to death, but usually we're talking about female victims that are stabbed. Did the police say anything about the stabbing, or their theories about why he was stabbed as opposed to shot or anything else? It seems like we hear a lot more about women being stabbed as opposed to men.
They have not said to me one way or the other as far as in that reference. The only thing that they have told me, there was 3 witnesses. The witnesses stated that they saw my father with this gentleman. They acted like as if they knew each other, but they could not tell for sure if they knew each other. At one point, they were talking. The next point, he was stabbed. The next point, they were hearing my father asking him, "What do you want? What do you need?" And then he was coming down this hill. What it was is it's the Rosewood boat landing off of Rosewood Drive in Columbia, South Carolina. And people go there, to sit and see the river. They put their boats in, this sort of thing. Back then, they used to keep it. They would have people come in and they would keep the grass cut and everything. Now it has grown up a lot, but where the witnesses were, they were up on the more of the parking lot side, where with my dad, he was down, coming up from where the riverside was. And when he was coming up, after they heard the commotion going on, he had his top shirt off, holding at him, stating that he had been stabbed. And by the time that he got to the witnesses, at that point, he fell to the ground, and they called and they said that the guy went running off across the riverbank. And by the time the cops got there, they could not, I guess they tried tracking him, but they weren't able to take it anywhere. And they just said that he had been stabbed. They just said that he had been stabbed, but they did not go into detail as far as versus a knife or a gun. I do know that my dad did I guess, fight back to a point because he had various cuts. He had a small stabbing behind the ear. He had a cut by the thumb and the point finger of his hand. He had various cuts on him from where he was trying to stop the guy from stabbing him, and got him in several places. So I do know that he did fight back from this guy. That's about the most that they have told me when it's come to that, versus answering your question, gun versus a knife. They think that it was a sloppy job. They don't think that this is something that this person probably ordinarily did, because they said that he was sort of sloppy with how he went about doing what he did.
And this area you described, the boat ramp area, it's not a place your dad would normally go to. It's not, he wasn't into boating. He hadn't been out there that you know of. Would he have been trusting enough to meet somebody out there that he wasn't comfortable with? Was he that type of person that
No.
So you feel that he may have known that person enough to go out there and trust him to be in that location?
I feel that if somebody had contacted him to meet him somewhere, it would be because he would have known him. Now, unless it was somebody that he had known and instead somebody showed up, versus the person that he was expecting, that might have been a different story. But to be honest with you, my dad was born and raised here, and I was born and raised there until I was like 16, 17 years old. I never knew that the place even existed. There is now a rock quarry that sits when you're coming down Rosewood Drive, you dead end at the rock quarry. Down below the rock quarry is this boat landing. And like I said, there's a few picnic tables, and pretty much people, I guess it's pretty busy on the weekends, or from what I've understood through people through Olympia and family that I know, where, if you have a boat, you go. And but to why he would be down there, I don't know. Yes, he used to do fishing. When he would come visit us, he would go fishing. We had family up at Lake Murray. We would go fishing and we would go out on boats, but he did not own a boat. And I cannot imagine to what he would be there for, or to what he would have been meeting somebody there for.
Now,
it is just...
Have the police found any evidence that he was robbed, or was robbery a possible motive? Did they say anything about that?
They did mention that it was a possibility, but from what the witnesses stated, he did apparently ask the guy, "What do you want? I can give you money. What do you want?" But as far as seeing any type of, anything going hand in hand, my dad giving him anything, that did not take place. He was stabbed before anything was taking place. So to whatever this person was wanting or was after or whatever, he did not get it. He stabbed him before whatever he was wanting, is the way I see it.
One of the theories that seems to have been thrown out there along the way, and it may have even been the police that mentioned this, that perhaps your father had a relationship he had hidden with that person that killed him, perhaps a homosexual relationship. Is that something that you dismiss? Do you think there's any kind of possibility that could be true? And how closely did police look at that angle?
Well, apparently they've looked at that angle quite a bit. Do I believe it? No. Is it hard for me to believe? Yes. could it possibly be that my father could have been gay? I guess that possibility is there. The way I've always seen him, I did not see that in him. I have questioned my aunts and uncles up until they passed after my dad, and they have all said to me, your dad, we do not know of this being a part of your father. For whatever reason, to whatever tips, to whatever has been given to the police, that at that time, that is what they went with. I know that today, the cop, the detective still says that, he cannot for sure say yes or no if he was or if he wasn't, or if this person was or was not his, quote, gay lover. And he cannot verify for sure if my father was gay or was not gay. They have been to various places where people has claimed that he had visited or went to. But every time they've gone there, my dad has been there by himself. If he was there with anybody, it would be a matter of sitting there with a glass of water or a Sprite, just sitting and talking. He never left with anybody. I've got a cousin that the two of them would get together and they would go uptown and go places. And he's even made comments that this was not true. So I don't know what to think of this. That is one thing that has very much affected our family. I'm not saying that I'm against somebody gay. I'm just saying that when it comes to my dad, it was not something that I noticed, expected, did not give it a thought about, and not until he was murdered. And it's still at times sort of hard to accept or to acknowledge the fact that it could be. But I do have to, at the same time, I have to, keep an open mind for the fact that I guess there is that possibility that maybe it could have been, and it was something that he finally came to terms with as he got older, and just was able to keep it secret. When he was in the Air Force, he was very secretive to begin with. When he was in the Army and the jobs that he did, mainly the Air Force, the work that he did, so I guess it's possible that could have been the same for his wife.
And even if he was gay, there was no reason he should have been murdered over it. But it opens up the possibility that perhaps the person was blackmailing him. I'm going to tell your family. I'm going to tell your friends, something along those lines.
Exactly.
And that's frustrating because now police, they don't know whether it's true or not, but they have to look at that possibility. But
exactly.
It makes the case that much harder to solve because there's so many more possibilities now if that is the case, and you've got more suspects to consider. And that's one of the frustrating things. As I was reading through here, I'd see that pop up. And, your dad came from a time when a lot of stuff like that you kept to yourself. And
exactly.
It wasn't as accepting a time as it is today. And whether or not he was, it shouldn't have caused him to be murdered either way. But for me, right, researching it was just one of those frustrating things that it just adds to the possibilities and maybe makes it that much harder to solve.
Right.
But one good thing that did come out of this entire thing, if there's anything good to come out of it, is that there were witnesses that saw them. And you mentioned there were multiple witnesses. Is that correct?
3 of them. Yes, there was 3 witnesses. It was, it just so happened there was 2 guys and a girl They were there was a concert going on at the downtown at the Coliseum. And they, for whatever reason, were down there. And I guess in a way it was sort of good that they were there, only for the simple fact that they were there to see what took place, and they were there in order to help my dad. Even though it did not save his life, but they were able to get the cops there, get the ambulance there, to be able to get him to the hospital. So that part of it. But as far as to anything else, they stayed there with him. They were right there with him. They tried speaking to him, talk to him. And they tried asking him questions, but he didn't really give a lot of information. He just told them that his name, who he was, and that was about it. By that time, I guess the ambulance was there, and they took him to the hospital. They tried reviving him and saving his life, but he had lost too much blood from the stabbings.
The people that were there that were with him at the time, the witnesses, they did help to create a sketch of the man that killed your father, and that's hopefully one thing that is a good lead, that maybe one day he can be identified that way if those witnesses get to see that photo and maybe pick him out.
Yes, the suspect was described as a Hispanic male of olive complexion, and he was between 25, 35 years old. Today, he would probably be about 50, 55, somewhere in that general area of age. He was around 5'5", 150 to 180 pounds. He had black hair, and he had a small mustache, is the way they described him. He was wearing a pair of sunglasses. He was in shorts and a top, shirt, like with buttons, small amount of buttons down the front. But they took him to the Palmetto Health Richland Hospital, and that is where he was pronounced dead. They have also told me that they believe of him being Hispanic, and they've also made the comment to me several times. We had farmers markets. There's a lot of farmers markets there in Columbia, and around the area where the farmers market is, by the fairgrounds, they had a housing for Hispanic people, illegal people that worked the farmers markets. And they have various ones around in Columbia. And Chief Smith has made comments to me in regards to, he feels that it's very possible that this guy could have been an illegal Hispanic that killed my dad. And he has told me several times that he's either still in the area, or he could be in prison, or he could have fled the area, and he could be, out of, in Mexico or someplace like that. So I don't know. So I just keep hoping that somebody might recognize him and could put a name to him, could put a place to where he might be, whether if he is still in South Carolina, or whether if something has happened and he could be in prison. I still hope for the day that they can come out with the playing cards, because Chief Smith has told me that he intends on putting my dad and the photo of the sketch on the playing cards to get out there and put my dad's story on there.
A really good idea to help spread that word, even in the prisons where some people might know something or hear something.
Yes. And I wish there was something that I knew to do to where I could do that, whether if it was a flyer or something like that, but I have not been able to find out as far as, what you're allowed to do in that circumstance, or if it's something that the sheriff's office has to do. which, they're so busy that it takes a lot for me to be able to get time with them. So a lot of it I have to do on my own, which I keep them in contact and I keep them posted on everything that I do. And a lot of the stuff that I do post and I put out there, the majority of it is with Chief Smith or, them a part of it, or their name is on it. Everything they have approved pretty much, but they know that I am constantly out there trying to get his story out, because I will not give up on it.
And do they have, besides the eyewitness descriptions in the sketch, is there any kind of DNA or evidence like that you know of in the case?
No, there is not. They just recently I'm going to go back like a little bit. When he was first murdered, about a year after he was murdered, there was a gentleman that murdered a family friend and her niece, and he eventually got life in prison. Prior to him going to prison, they thought that he was possible the suspect. And after he had gone to prison, they had charged him along with the woman and child. After he was in, they found out and discovered that he was not the person, so they dropped all the charges. I was never notified of that. And so there was about 12, 14 years there where I always thought that this person was his killer, and I had to wait until he broke out of prison or something happened for him to come out, for them to then recharge or do whatever they had to do to, convict him of also my father. The only thing is there was still no DNA. There was still no knife. So I was still sort of hesitance on how were they going to be able to do this when they did not have, the knife or DNA. Well, it turned out, as I said, they dropped the charges. So whenever I discovered and come across about 6 years ago now that the charges were dropped and the case was somewhat open, it was just sitting there. And when I got it reopened and Chief Smith and the cold case department at Richland County Sheriff's Office started reopening it, that's when everything pretty much started over. And they started running his DNA back through. They weren't able to get anything. And just recently they spoke with me. This was back in the summertime, and they talked to me about that. I never say it correctly. I want to call it VVAC, but I don't think that's the correct term. But it's that VAC where they do like a shirt or pants or whatever, and they they pull DNA from like a shirt or whatever. Do you know what I'm referring to?
It's the MVAC.
MVAC. Okay. Yep. They did that. But they did not do it on like his whole undershirt or his whole top shirt. They did bits and pieces, and but nothing came out of it as of right now. From nothing came from it. So I don't know if it was just because they just did bits and pieces, and that just was not, the area in which possibly the suspect could have, had blood drip or whatever. I don't know. It's sort of hard I don't know nothing about holding a knife to stab somebody. But when you're, got a knife and, you're working it like that, I don't know how in the world somebody cannot cut themselves, even if it's just a small cut. But I just can't imagine that there's no DNA, but I guess so far from, from these years, they're not coming up with nothing. So,
I think you bring up a good point, because a lot of times in stabbing attacks, if you're not wearing gloves, there's a good chance your hand can slip as you're stabbing somebody and actually cut yourself.
Right.
It's possible maybe he was wearing gloves, or somehow his hand didn't slip, or maybe he did cut himself. And I don't know how closely they've looked at the DNA, if they've tried to separate any DNA to see if there's more than one sample. But it would be interesting to see how far they went to make sure all of the blood in your father's clothes, to make sure that was all of your father's blood and not somebody else's. Because that would be a possible break if some of that blood on there didn't belong to your dad.
Right. That part I don't know. I just know that they have told me that they did do this VAC, and they, that they were waiting on the pieces that they did send in, but when it came back, that they came back saying that there was no, because they were wanting to also to do a DNA profile, because they have not done a DNA profile on him yet. But apparently they're not even being able to do that, because I guess I'm guessing DNA from my dad himself had to show up, and I guess there was not even DNA of my dad. So I don't know how, there was blood on the shirt, so I don't know how that comes about, but so no, there's nothing yet. That sort of came to a dead end.
Hopefully, as science advances, you never know what kind of technologies will come out 5 years from now or 10 years from now, but hopefully there's something behind that, maybe not now, but maybe even a few years down the road, they'll be able to use, and perhaps use that to figure out who did this to your father.
Right. Well, that was one of the things. Another detective that works there in the cold case department with Chief Smith, he had Lieutenant Eisenhower also help with my dad's case. And when he called me about it and was letting me know what was taking place, he also told me, he said, Tammy, look, he said, I could have sent his undershirt and his top shirt and his pants, he said, and I could have had them do everything. He said, but if I had done that, they would have taken every bit of blood DNA that there would be possible. He said, and I did not want to do that, because once they do that, then everything's gone. There's no more going back to it. He said, so that is why I decided to give them a piece here, a piece there, this sort of thing. And he said, because there is so much coming out about DNA and so many different techniques, new techniques coming out, he said, I want it to be open to where we still have his shirts and his blood, to where possibly something else could come around that we could try, and not put it all in one basket, to say, for right now, and leave some of it open. And so I told him that was fine. They're the detectives, and they know more about this than I do. I probably could have said to them, no, this now, and what's to say that there could not be a very tiny spot somewhere down that shirt that is not showing up? How are you not going to know? Or, you could miss it, if you didn't do this. But I went with what he had to say, and hoped that something would show up, but unfortunately, nothing showed up. So I've just got to wait until the next time they try something different.
Well, you've waited a long time. You've been very patient. It's approaching almost 25 years now.
23 years. It'll be 23, August 17th, 1996. Mm-hmm.
And do these years that go by, how frustrating is it to know that there's not a whole lot to go on and you still want to see the case solved, but, years keep passing by? Is that a really frustrating feeling for you?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, it is. It is very frustrating because, here I've got this sketch of somebody that could be, that's supposed to be a real person that is out there that stabbed my dad for whatever reason. I have no name. I have no idea where he is. I have no idea why he did it. I have no idea what this argument was about, what they were meeting for. These questions can go on and on and on. And plus all of the questions, that has been presented to me by the detectives, about him being gay. Is he gay or is he not gay? Was this his lover or was it not his lover? Was it somebody that he knew? Was it somebody he didn't know? I could go on and on and on with it, but to the end of the day, until somebody sees this and that one person and says, "Oh my gosh, I remember this," or "I know who this person is," or "Oh, well, that looks like, whoever," until we have a name, until, we have some kind of case or answers to help them bring a case. I mean, it's just one more case out there that is just, he's sitting on a shelf in their facility that's collecting dust and has spider webs all over him that he can't stand. And I think about that because my dad did not like spiders. And I just, it's just a thing with me with that. But yeah, it is frustrating because every day I am putting his story out there on websites, on Twitter. I have a page on Twitter for him. And then I also have Facebook. I have his name, Jack O. Robinson. I have a page for him. And then I have several groups that I also put, and that's dedicated to him for South Carolina, various other states. And along with him, I help with others. I have helped work Project Cold Case from Jacksonville. Here back several years ago, we did a book, and it was dedicated to 22 unsolved murders. And it's Grief Diaries, Project Cold Case, true stories that were about surviving and loss of a loved one to an unsolved crime. And I am also in the middle of working on helping with another book. This time I'm doing it a little bit different from the first, never done it before, so now my second time. But I'm just, Chief Smith is open to me with me trying to get my dad's story out there. He knows that I am not going to give up. He knows that no matter what he tells me, that I'm not stopping at it. I mean, he could tell me today, "Tammy, you need to stop this." Well, he knows that that's not going to happen. I have to get his story out. I am his voice. I'm the only voice that he has. They're busy. They've had like 35 murders in Columbia, South Carolina, just in like a week or so. And, yes, my dad's been murdered for going on 23 years, and I feel like his murder is just as important as the next murder. But I know that there's other families out there that needs justice just the same as my dad, just the same as I do. And they can only work so many at a time. So I feel like this is my way of being able to help them. That somebody will see his story, see the composite of the person that murdered him, hear what his story is about that may refresh somebody's memory of 22 years ago of what happened. And someone could call in to Crime Stoppers and say, I do know something about this murder or about this person. And I wish for that every day, that could happen.
I was going to say, I hope you get that answer sooner rather than later. Figure out who did this to your father. And if there is somebody out there that should be listening to this show and maybe something we're talking about makes them think of something, or they know somebody that might fit this description, who should they contact to provide information to investigators in your dad's case?
They can call Crime Stoppers. There's $1,000 reward. The phone number is 888-CRIME, CRIME, South Carolina, SC. That, or they can call the Richland County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Department, Chief Stan Smith, at 803-576-3037. And those would be the two numbers in which they could call. Of course, Crime Stoppers, you can call anonymously and, give whatever you know about either the suspect or about the case. But that's 1-888-CRIME, CRIME-SC, and there's $1,000 reward.
Well, hopefully somebody out there, if they do know something, does the right thing and goes forward with a tip. And who knows, maybe that's the missing link in this case, is somebody just coming forward after all this time. Maybe they felt they couldn't do it a long time ago, but maybe they can now. And hopefully that's something that could, maybe give the case new life.
Right. Well, if somebody out there knows something, I wish somebody would come forward. It has been a long road for myself and my sons. They miss their grandfather. I miss my father. And he's missed out so much with my sons growing up. Now I've got two grandsons, great grandsons to my dad, and I just wish that somebody could come forward, and I would appreciate very much if there is anyone out there that knows anything about my father, Jack L. Robinson. He was in the Air Force. He did work out at Moncrief Hospital. He worked in the lab there at the hospital. He was born and raised there in Columbia. And I would appreciate anybody that could contact either Chief Smith or the Crime Stoppers if you have any kind of information on my father's case. It would be greatly appreciated for you to call in and to give what you may know. It's been a long road.
Thank you once again for listening to this episode of The Murder of My Family. Before you go, I'd like to play previews of two true crime podcasts that I think you'll really enjoy. And both of these focus on mysteries related to the highway. Mile Marker 181 and Route 29 Stalker. And before you go, remember that every murder victim means something to somebody.
Murder or a freak accident? A cover-up or just rumor? On November 19th, 2011, after a night out with friends, 20-year-old Jalea Davis was struck by her own car and found lying in the passing lane of I-77. Her car? Found 0.3 of a mile north of her body. Her clothes? Found lying over the guardrail. Her friends? The granddaughter of the former sheriff and the son of a former police officer. The rumors? Running wild. My name is Emily, and this all took place in my hometown. So, I started digging. Mile Marker 181 is an investigative journey through the details surrounding the suspicious death of Jalea Davis, which was ultimately ruled an accident by the local sheriff's department. Each episode, I go over the case documents, compare timelines and alibis, analyze phone records, speak with Jalea's family, and sometimes even uncover new information. You can listen to Mile Marker 181 anywhere you get your podcast. Listen to the facts and then decide for yourself. Accident or murder?
This is Woody Graham Watts, host of the Route 29 Stalker podcast. Between the years of 1996 to 2014, an unusually high number of women have fallen victim to disappearances and murders along Route 29 in Virginia. Join us on our journey as we look into these cases with interviews and trips to the crime scenes. Subscribe today and visit Route29Stalker.com. That's Route29Stalker.com.